Aloha, and mahalo for joining us. This is Kupuna Power. I'm Brickwood Galuteria, and I'll be your host as we weave moments of Kupuna Power for your enjoyment. So what is Kupuna Power? We know one thing for sure. You can only achieve the lofty status of Kupuna by living up to it. You cannot be a Kupuna at 30 or 40 years of age. At 50, you begin receiving senior discounts. And at 60, you're beginning to think about Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and other programs you've contributed all your life to ensure quality of life during your golden years. Kupuna Power is a state of mind, self-determination, that you have the authority over how your life will be lived, where and with whom. But to accomplish most of those goals, Kupuna must know the resources needed for your support, resources that help you assume responsibilities for your decisions and actions. In doing so, you will find your power and become self-advocates, empowering yourself with the knowledge of what resources are available to you from the state, the city, and even the federal government. Speaking of empowerment, go to our website, wearekupuna.com, for more. We've distilled the overwhelming landscape of Kupuna information into a helpful website, wearekupuna.com. Check it out. In addition, our Kupuna Power Facebook page, our Kupuna Power YouTube channel, and we're also pleased to share that hawaiinewsnow.com are all current for access to past shows. These platforms are Kupuna friendly and Ohana friendly. We've even developed a Kupuna Power product line, coffee mugs, coffee and pancake mix, Kupuna Power masks. The line can be accessed through our website with a link to popupmakeke.com. So we've set the table and let's prepare to partake. Brian Schatz is Hawaii's senior United States Senator. Since joining the Senate, he's focused his efforts on helping workers, veterans, and families, and has led key legislation on healthcare, climate change, and technology. Senator Schatz chairs the Indian Affairs Committee, and among other assignments, serves on the Appropriations Committee, which puts him in a unique position to support our island home. Prior to his service in Congress, Senator Schatz was Hawaii's Lieutenant Governor and served for 8 years in the Hawaii State House of Representatives. When we come back, we'll talk story with Hawaii's senior senator. Born and bred and back home for a little while, Brian Schatz is here. This is Kupuna Power. Stay tuned.
Kupuna Power is brought to you by the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement, Show Aloha Challenge, Stanford Car LLC, Kamehameha Schools, and Barbie Waihi Realty.
Aloha, everybody. Welcome back to Kupuna Power. Senator Schatz is here with us. Brian Schatz grew up in Honolulu, received his bachelor's degree from Pomona College. He's married to Linda Schatz, an architect, and they have a son and a daughter, and we want to welcome him to Kupuna Power. Aloha, Senator. Welcome.
Nice to see you, Brickwood.
Oh, good to see you, too.
Great set.
Thank you so much. Jill Easley from Easley Designs does our beautiful sets.
It's beautiful.
We're really happy. This is a rumble in the jungle over here today. Happy to have you home.
I'm happy to be home. I'm always happy when I'm home. It was a little strange, the July 4th holiday, no parades, but we just used the time to hang out as a family.
Yeah, right. That's terrific. Does Linda and the two young ones, well, I guess they're not young anymore.
Teenagers now, yeah.
Teenagers now. Do they spend a lot of time in Washington with you?
Not as much. Not as much time as I spend back home. So I try to fly home during non-COVID times. I try to fly home as many weekends as I can, and we usually have 3 weeks up in Washington and then 1 week home. So mostly they're here. Occasionally they'll come to Washington and visit, but mostly it's the home base is Honolulu, Paoa, and I'm the one going back and forth.
Yeah. No kidding, huh? Well, please give them our aloha.
Oh, thank you.
The last time we talked politics on this show was with Congressman Kai Kahele. Mm-hmm. And he was on his way. He was going to jump on a plane and head towards Washington for his first Kai Kahele Goes to Washington experience. And he walked into an insurrection. That must have been a wild one, right?
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit about your personal experience?
Well, we were on the Senate floor and we were actually actively debating whether or not to certify the election results themselves. And so, it was intense and it was frustrating because James Langford stood up, a very conservative senator with whom I have a good relationship, stood up, and he was in the middle of objecting, which disappointed me at a sort of human level, because I consider him to be a decent person. And he got gavelled out, not by the presiding officer, but by the security in the building. And they immediately interrupted his speech, banged the gavel to recess, and then called for a lockdown. And then within 30 seconds or so, one of the Capitol Police yelled, "Shots fired." Wow. And they were still locking down all the various ways into the Senate. And this was, now we know, this was those moments were when that heroic officer Daniel Goodman was luring the insurrectionists away from the Senate chamber. Now, we didn't know what was happening. We were just told to stay in our seats. And then I guess it was about 2 minutes later, now that I pieced together what happened, because time was sort of standing still. And then they whisked us away to an undisclosed location, and we just basically sat there, almost all senators in the same room, including some of the people who were, I thought, involved in precipitating the bad actions, for about 4 hours while we waited for the Guard and everyone else to mobilize.
What's a conversation like for 4 hours while the Capitol is under siege?
There was very little conversation at the beginning. The Reverend for the chaplain for the United States Senate, Barry Black, came in and led us in a prayer, which I thought was helpful for sort of grounding us and making sure we had unity. It was a non-denominational prayer, but I thought that was helpful. And then we were starting to think about logistics, about reconvening, because everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, but almost every United States senator really wanted to show the world, show the insurrectionists, show the United States that we weren't going to allow these violent insurrectionists to interfere with the constitutional process. So that was what sort of bound us together that afternoon and then into the evening. And then it was just a matter of monitoring law enforcement's process in clearing the building. So we were watching TV just like everybody else and texting our family and our staff and our friends just to reassure them that we were safe.
Well, I've got to tell you, Hawaii's hearts were with you. And, we're glad that you're home safe now. You still got a lot of work to do, though.
Yeah,
now,
we do.
You know what's important, I think, is and ironically, these segments they don't take very long. We just got through talking about what you went through. Now, going forward, I think it's important for our viewers to understand, as the chairman of, say, the Indian Affairs Committee, what's your agenda for climate change, and if we can be brief on that, because I also want to take a look at the human side of Brian Schatz as well.
Sure. Well, so I am now the chairman of the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs, which has jurisdiction on all Native people, Alaska Natives, American Indian tribes that have been recognized by the federal government, and of course, Native Hawaiians. And so that obligation is very serious. Of course, my two predecessors, Daniel Kahikina Kaka and Daniel K. Inouye, both held that chairmanship. And my objective over the next 2 years is to bring as many resources as I can home as possible. There's a lot of policy fights. The recognition thing is, I think, for another time. There are laws that need to be changed, but in the meantime, it comes down to broadband access and healthcare access and housing access and education and language access. And that's where I'm trying to focus. In the last 6 months, we've brought $200 million home for Native Hawaiian programs and Native Hawaiian serving institutions. So that's the focus of my chairmanship there. And then I think the next step for the Congress is to pass the American Jobs Plan. There are a lot of good things in it, and we're still sort of negotiating over the finer details. But my highest priority in that bill is to make sure we take meaningful action on climate change for obvious reasons. Before the show started, you were talking about your wife was in Seattle and experiencing, I think, the worst heat wave ever.
Oh, boy. They had to go to a hotel because my son doesn't have AC because it's Seattle.
Yeah, I think 60% of places in Seattle don't have air conditioning. And so it's not just a climate and environment question. Then it becomes a social equity question, because climate change is going to impact people who can't move to a hotel, who can't move inland, who can't just relocate their home or insure their home or put sandbags up. Climate impacts are going to be disproportionately towards people who don't have the financial means to weather the storm, literally now.
Did you enjoy the trade winds when you came back
Oh
home?
man, I do, and I have been, and it's I know I'm sort of mentally shifting to Hawaii when I get on the plane and then I check the surf and then the weather.
That's right. That's right. So Point Panics is up today, by the way.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Oh man, slamming.
Yeah.
We're going to take a little pause. We're with Senator Brian Schatz. We're talking politics. Well, we're going to be talking home when we come back. So let's take a little pause. And please return with us, yeah? Good, fun talk story with Hawaii's senior senator. I'm Brickwood Galutaria.
Kupuna Power is brought to you by the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement, Show Aloha Challenge, Stanford Car LLC, Kamehameha Schools, and Barbie Waihi Realty.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Kupuna Power. Here we are at Kupuna Power at Windward Mall. We're very, very happy and pleased to serve you in so many different ways, especially in shows like this, where we have, in this particular case, one of our congressional delegation who's here with us. Senior Senator Brian Schatz has joined us. We had a brief talk story about what he went through just in recent months at the U.S. Capitol. And now let's turn our attention back here to our Hawaii Nei, because we always want to know, you know, Brian Schatz, where do you grow up, and the schools, you know, around here when we're talking to Kupuna, it's like, are you related to brothers, friends, uncles, aunties, friends, brothers, sister? That's the genealogical chant, right?
Yeah.
So same thing. Now tell us a little bit about Brian Schatz. I know you got a twin.
Yeah, I have an identical twin. Well, so let me start at the beginning. I'll also just observe, I did this in Washington at the beginning of every meeting for my first 2-3 years.
Yeah.
And I realized that, oh wait, this is just a Hawaii thing, because they would all look at me like, what's going on? Why are we talking about ourselves? Everybody on the mainland just jumps right into the substance, right? As opposed to getting to know the person. Anyway, you know, I grew up in East Honolulu, went to Kahala Elementary, then to Punahou, 4 boys in the family, no girls. 2 boys went to Iolani, 2 boys went to Punahou, and we played water polo against each other. So the older brothers are on the mainland, and my twin brother is in Honolulu.
The mom and dad did what?
So dad was a professor of medicine at the University of Hawaii. He was a professor of medicine at the University of Michigan, and came here for a conference and was offered a job, and just said, "Let's go." And so I was 2 years old when we moved to Hawaii. And that's the extent of my connection with Michigan. Is I was born there, and I root for their basketball teams.
Oh, there you go. You and a whole bunch of other guys.
Yeah, that's right.
Hey, so what gave you, what was a turning point for politics when you knew you wanted to get into public service?
Well, I was going to follow in my dad's footsteps in terms of being in public service. He was, he was a professor of medicine primarily. He had a little bit of a private practice, but he thought he could make a bigger difference by educating a bunch of future doctors across the state of Hawaii. He had a long history of fighting for justice. He was the very first whistleblower against the Tuskegee experiments, where they withheld penicillin from African-American men, and wrote to the United States Public Health Service. And so that's like the legacy of my family, and the way my dad defined success for all of us was, how can you accomplish the most good on behalf of other people? But I didn't want to go into medicine. And so it wasn't clear sort of what my path would be, except that I was deeply passionate about Hawaii's physical environment, and very worried about climate change even when I was sort of in my late teens. And so I came home from college and started a nonprofit environmental organization. And we did great work. We cleaned streams, we cleaned beaches, we helped with hiking trails, stuff like that. And I realized that I wanted to try to make a difference at the institutional level, because as much as it's important for everybody to be doing that grassroots work, I felt that those organizations needed more backup from their public leaders. And so that's when I decided to run for office at the maybe overly young age of 25 years old.
Well, hey, listen, you got service is not for everybody.
No.
Especially in the policy-making area.
No, and it's, it's not always glorious either. There was a lot of people slamming on my front door. Brickwood, you know about that. And,
yeah.
I'm sick and tired of you coming around. Bang.
Yeah, right, right. And there's also when you're waving, that there's that solemn moment where you get not a wave back at you.
Not a wave.
Yeah. Hey, okay, so this is a good thing. What are the plans like going forward for Senator Schatz with regard to your particular emphasis on climate change and such?
Well, first of all, I want to protect Hawaii from climate change. What does that mean? That means that our physical infrastructure needs to be hardened and needs to be adaptive. So that means airports, roads, the maritime infrastructure, the ports, and all of that. We also need to look at natural ecosystems. So what the Army Corps and the state government did at Kawainui Marsh was kind of a new model where they said, hey, we need to do flood control, but the old model for flood control is basically paving everything. And now we can accomplish flood control while maintaining ecosystems. And so I'm trying to transform the way we think about preparing for climate change, not just building everything, hardening everything, but using the kind of natural wisdom of maintaining ecosystems as a smart strategy for climate adaptation. And then at the national and international level, we simply just need to follow Hawaii's lead and use less fossil fuels, start to develop more wind and solar energy across the country.
Securing for future generations. I think that's what you're
That's
talking
right.
about, But for this particular generation that we're talking to, you should know that in the last election, 60% of the electorate was 50 plus. So this is Kupuna Power.
And I know that it's in no small part, it was vote by mail, it was an exciting election, but it was also what you and others did in terms of driving out the vote in a nonpartisan way, not to, and I know your history and your political party previously, but what you're doing right now is such an incredible public service on a bipartisan basis, on a nonpartisan basis, to just say, hey, it's a good idea for everybody to get involved in the political process, and how you vote is another matter, but please do vote no matter what happens.
Yeah, really. And we're not that far away from the next one. We're just a year away.
Yeah.
Reapportionment and everything like that. Anyway, you'll learn more about that through Kupuna Power. But I want you to know that, okay, so Senator Akaka was a big part of Kupuna Power when he first came back from Washington. And this is the Kahikina Award. So we're going to put your name on here.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, just to be part of the Kahikina Award. So thank you for your service, and take us back with you when you head on over there. And I want you to have your Senator Brian Schatz
wow. Look
Kupuna
at that.
coffee.
And it's a nice
mug.
and big cup. I'm always looking for a big coffee mug because the small one, then I have to have multiple cups.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Senator. Okay, you take care now.
Aloha.
Senator Brian Schatz here with us. We'll be back for some closing thoughts right after these important words. I'm Brickwood Galuteria. This is Kupuna Power.
Kupuna Power is brought to you by the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement, Show Aloha Challenge, Stanford Car LLC, Kamehameha Schools, and Barbie Waihi Realty.
So that does it for today's Kupuna Power. Let's quickly revisit our Kupuna Power principles for action: choice, relationships, contribution to community, dignity and respect, malama ke kahi ike kahi, take care of one another. And finally, our Kupuna Power tip for the week. Many people who are retiring by 65 will have many more years to live on a fixed income and with the high cost of health care. This is why it's most important that people take a careful look at their finances and life goals. A few things to consider. Do a 50,000-mile checkup of your finances. We do a 50,000-mile checkup on our cars so that it continues to run well, right? Well, we need to do a checkup of our total financial health as we enter retirement. Pensions, Social Security, home equity, deferred compensation plans, inheritance if you do have one, and life insurance. Can you estimate your retirement income before retirement? How's your investments doing for your retirement years? Have you done estate planning? Do you have a trust? Do you have a will? Do you need power of attorney? For all of the answers to these questions, a good place to start is the Aging and Disability Resource Center, ADRC, 768-7700, ADRC. Remember that, okay? Mahalo for joining us for this edition of Kupuna Power. And once again, thank you to our Senior Senator, Brian Schatz. Be good to each other until we meet again. I'm Brickwood Galuteria. Aloha.
Veli na mai o Hawaii nei o Lahuie e ho I mai ho olo he mai I nana mai malama o Hawaii nei ho ala ho lo kahi e laulima mai Hapahi o mai, ho'okahi me, kumupono e, nana I ke ku